Hello and welcome everyone to StudyTravel TV Live. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel magazine, and I'd like to introduce you to a live news programme where we'll share news, statistics and invite industry people to discuss topical items. A couple of housekeeping points before we get started. Firstly, please don't unmute yourself unless a StudyTravel team member unmutes you.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Hancox, editor of StudyTravel magazine. For the best viewing experience, please put the call in side-by-side speaker view. You will see an icon in the top right corner where you can select this view.
And in today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story and then we'll be joined by our guest this week, David O'Grady, CEO of MEI, and Pascal Carré, Manager of Languages and Travel, Study Experience, and President of Belgian Agency Association, ABELIO. We'll then introduce a few more stories as we go through the show. If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on the stories, please post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to our sponsor, Londonist.
So let's have a look at our main story this week. The government of Malta has announced that all new arrivals into the country must be vaccinated against COVID-19 or face a mandatory hotel quarantine. It also announced that English language schools would close temporarily for face-to-face teaching as of July 14th, due to a sharp rise in cases.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Health, Christopher Fern, initially announced that from July the 14th, tourists aged 12 years and over can only travel to Malta if they have a vaccination certificate issued at least 14 days prior to arrival. But on July the 14th, the Malta Tourism Authority posted an update on Facebook notifying that unvaccinated arrivals would be subject to a mandatory hotel quarantine period of 14 days at a minimum cost of €1,400. So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests, Pascal and David. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello. So Pascal, this story has caused a bit of a storm on our StudyTravel network this week, with many people in Malta and abroad upset about the lack of notice given by the Maltese government about this change to regulations. I know that Belgian agencies have been affected by this announcement, as many had students in Malta at the time. How do you think this situation could have been handled differently by the government?
Well, first of all, before answering the two questions, may I remind everyone that Maltese ELT schools had been labelled fully compliant with the health protocols. It is not as if they had breached any protocol or whatever. Secondly, the number of positive cases was very low when the decision was taken by the Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Health, Mr. Fern. There were only 96 reported positive cases on a population of 500,000. And thirdly, Malta has reached herd immunity with 80% of the population totally vaccinated. To answer your questions, the Maltese government ought to have consulted Feltham and DLT schools first before taking such a brutal, unilateral and discriminating measure. Secondly, they could have either closed the classroom, if needed the schools, where there was a case, as we are doing in most European countries for months. And also, as Malta decided to only accept vaccinated visitors, why not allowing ELT schools to teach to vaccinated students already? To answer your second question, agencies, and of course, not just agencies, but also schools, and not, of course, just Belgian agencies, handled the situation the best way they could, with very little time to react before the next departures on the following day, contacting parents, cancelling bookings and flights. Everyone had hoped this would not happen again this summer, in the only speaking destination in Europe, where it was easy to travel, while the UK is still imposing a quarantine and Irish schools are still closed.
And David, I know things are starting to change in Ireland now, and we're about to look at a new story regarding these new changes, but language schools in Ireland suffered a similar fate, didn't they, when they were closed down by the Irish government in October last year. So what damage do you think this blanket response on behalf of the government does to the ELT industry? And do you think it's an overreaction?
Well, I think it serves as a cautionary tale to everybody involved, whether it's government or providers or airlines, that they have to work closely together and develop, if you like, an interesting rapport so that they're able to meet situations and adapt instantly and immediately. And that's what we had to do in the autumn last year in October, where when infection numbers rose, sort of spiked, well, then there was an immediate sort of shutdown of what was operating. And I think that's the only way we can work, is to work closely as a group with different organizations, with airlines, with government, and hold things together that way.
Okay, and next up, Ireland's English language sector has been advised that schools can reopen for face-to-face teaching for existing students already in the country. In a confirmation document seen by StudyTravel magazine, the government confirmed to the sector that in-person teaching activity could resume from Monday this week, where it is safe to do so.
Yes, the Department of Further and Higher Education told schools to prepare for the safe resumption of limited small group in-person provision, but has indicated that until further notice, this is exclusively to cater for the needs of the existing cohort of ELE students currently in the state.
The government cautioned that there is no basis for the recruitment of new international students seeking to travel to Ireland at this time. So, David, this is some good news, I guess, for Ireland's language schools, although the fact that they're still unable to recruit new students during the summer season is something of a blow. How many ELE students are currently in Ireland, and will they make any difference to school revenue, given that they're probably already doing online courses? And can your schools survive for the rest of 2021?
Well, we don't know, I mean, statistically, how many students there are in Ireland at the moment in terms of English language, but very few. I would say, in terms of long-term students who have been here since last year, probably in total, maybe 3,000 or 4,000. The recent changes whereby we have now taken baby steps and we're able to, where we wish and where schools are properly prepared, can teach face-to-face students already registered in the schools and who have been taking courses online. The fact that we still can't recruit is problematic. What we would like most to have is a date where we can start recruiting, just a date. It doesn't have to be this week or next month, but a date towards which we can all work. And that's what we would need most from government to be able to guarantee us. In terms of revenue and income, well, there isn't really, because all we're doing at the moment is teaching through students already in our schools and students who have paid for courses maybe even last year. So there's no new, if you like, wave of money or revenue coming into the schools. In terms of 2021, how many, I mean, at the moment, thanks to very generous government support schemes, we're all there. We're all still surviving. So 2022 is going to be the new year where anything will happen, I think. And until then, we have to wait and see. But as it is, I think the government supports will probably stay in place for the rest of this year. In that case, we should be able to sort of struggle through.
And Pascal, Belgium doesn't appear in the StudyTravel magazine market report for the top 10 student nationalities in Ireland. Even distant New Zealand is a more popular destination according to ABELIO's 2019 stats. But have you seen signs of Ireland becoming a more popular destination for Belgian students?
Yes, from the very beginning of this year, and probably due to Brexit, we noticed an increase in demand for Ireland for English, but not just for English, but also for higher education in Ireland, with, of course, the advantage that there is no student visa needed for Europeans, no health surcharge, as in the UK now, and that it is possible for a European to work in Ireland, which is no longer the case in the UK. But there is a but, these inquiries cannot so far materialize in enrollments until schools reopened, unfortunately. So we are definitely hoping that Ireland, I'm sure, will be in the top 10 countries for Belgians next year, if not before.
Okay, let's take another story. We're going to the UK now. Application data from the UK University Application Service, UCAS, for the 2021-22 academic year shows a record number of undergraduate applications from non-EU students, but a large drop in applications from EU students for the first year of post-Brexit full tuition fees.
The data relating to the June 30th deadline for applications to commence undergraduate programmes in September 2021 shows that 102,000 non-EU students have made applications, a 14.4% increase compared with the previous year, and the highest total ever recorded by UCAS.
The UK's new graduate route stream of post-study work rights formally opened for applications at the beginning of this month, and this has been credited with increasing the attractiveness of the UK as a higher education study destination.
So Pascal, you deal with higher education students wanting to study in the UK. The 2021-22 academic year will be the first year EU students will have to pay full tuition fees or international fees. How has the change of fees and status for EU students affected this sector of your business?
Well, first of all, many Europeans, including students, requested the pre-settled status, allowing them to still benefit from the student loan and the home fees. So I've got quite a number of students who actually have got the EU pre-settled status, and they will still benefit for this coming intake from the student loan and from the home fees. Certainly, many UK universities, as a reaction, give scholarships for the coming intakes, not just September 2021, but also September 2022, reducing the gap between international and home fees. Of course, we are losing students who do not have the pre-settled status and who consequently cannot get the student loan. I expect the drop to be bigger for the September 2022 intake, as European students will no longer be able to ask for the pre-settled status, and there will probably be less scholarships as well. The graduate route is a good initiative, but of course does not compensate the loss of the student loan, which hurts the most.
Okay, and David, is Ireland expecting an increase of European higher education students on the back of this change? Do you think that will filter down to language schools in Ireland with an influx of students wanting to study on pathway or academic prep courses?
Well, Ireland isn't a very strong, or is only a developing, if you like, third level destination for international students. And of those, the biggest numbers are from United States, from Canada, from India, all of which are native English speakers. So the number of EU students attending third level schools or colleges in Ireland isn't huge. And those that do have usually good English. So there hasn't been a great sort of trickle down from third level to our sector, to the English language sector.
Okay. Do you think that's something that might develop in the future?
Yes, I do. However, in terms of third level and in terms of the EU, big competition for Irish third level institutions and universities is other European countries, like universities in the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Sweden, where they offer programs all in English in the universities. So they're, you know, a kind of a more vigorous competition to us, even with the UK now no longer sort of in the same bracket. So they're the ones we have to sort of, you know, kind of watch out for.
Okay. Right, let's have another a look at another story from the last few days. Teaching staff and professionals working in UK's ELT sector gathered outside the Houses of Parliament on Monday this week to call on the UK government to provide business rates relief for all ELT centres in the country from the start of the COVID-19 pandemic until 2022, as well as targeted grants and other support measures.
Protesters who held placards and banners also cheered on staff from UK language courses or UKLC as they arrived at the demonstration after completing a 500-mile walk and cycle from York to London to raise awareness about these issues and raise funds for industry charity, the Eddie Byers Fund.
And StudyTravel magazine's staff reporter, Josh Walton, attended the protest and produced this video report for us.
Earlier this week, I attended the UK ELT Day of Action organised by English UK and spoke to a few of the protesters about what they were trying to achieve.
We know that English language schools provide a unique experience and a unique insight into how Britain is, and therefore I think the best thing to do is to allow them to get back to normal. We can't rewrite the last 15 months, however much I would have liked to have tried to do so. the time is to look to the future.
Due to restrictions, the industry has been denied support, consistent support from government, and yet it's unable to trade at anything like normal volumes. For example, in 2020, we know that student numbers were 83% down. So the situation is pretty desperate for language schools. Whether they're opposition MPs or Tory MPs, backbench MPs, or involved with government, we would like them to do everything they can in their power to ensure that this industry survives and that it's able to make it through to such a time as students are able to come back in something like normal volumes. So that's really our aim today.
The event was highly successful in raising the profile of the cause.
It's been fantastic, the support has been overwhelming. We've raised over £4,000 for the ABELIO Fund, so we're super proud of our achievements and very grateful for everyone that's turned out here today to support us.
We will keep campaigning and we'll keep fighting for this industry because we believe in it and we want it to thrive.
So this shows just how strongly ELT professionals in the UK are feeling about conditions in their industry at the moment and how serious the situation is. David, how important do you think school associations are at galvanising their members into action and lobbying government? And what is MEI doing to support the ELT industry in Ireland at the moment?
Well, I mean, the last year and a half has focused attention on how necessary it is that the ELT organisation in Ireland is, if you like, well, galvanised and coherent and speaks with a voice and advocates the needs of the members. And that's what we've been doing. We've been trying, well, I think successfully, we have met more often virtually than we have all our lives, I think, in person. So we have, if you like, been much more united and much more determined to survive and carry on. And we've worked hard at lobbying both government and opposition members of the parliament in trying to raise profile. It's not always easy. There are lots of other competing interests. Every sector in society is sort of trying to sort of take soup from the same bowl. So we have to sort of fight our corner more vigorously all the time. However, we're determined that what we're doing and the services we provide are correct and good and have quality so that we just stay with it.
Okay, and Pascal, what about the agencies? Is the Belgian government or the European Commission being helpful in any real way for your members?
Currently, we get two types of help. We get federal, let's say, business relief rates, and we also, from the regional governments, we get grants, money, paid in different, periods every now and then. But this, at the moment, it's not sufficient, and there is a difference between regions. Of course, I know we cannot complain. There are countries, I think, like Spain, where agencies do not get anything, any single penny, to keep on. And I think, we cannot complain, although we are lobbying together with the Union of Professional Travel Agencies in Belgium. We are, let's say, lobbying the governments, the various governments, in order to get support for the next few months, because I think these will be critical, as we are not definitely not yet back into a normality, hopefully in 2022. So we need more help and more support until 2022.
Okay, let's take another story then. Canada has announced planned changes to its COVID-19 travel restrictions over the next 2 months, with measures including all vaccinated travellers being permitted to travel from September, an end to hotel quarantine, and an expansion of airports permitted to receive international flights. From September 7th, provided the domestic epidemiologic situation remains favourable, the Canadian government will open borders to any travellers who are vaccinated with government-accepted vaccines.
As previously reported, Canada recently relaxed measures for study permit holders who are fully vaccinated from July the 5th. The change from September will allow vaccinated travellers to travel for short courses of 6 months or less without a study permit.
So Pascal, this move makes Canada one of the most accessible destinations for language travellers wanting to learn English worldwide. Canada ranks number 3 behind the UK and US for Belgian students. So could future ABELIO stats show Canada moving up the rankings?
I think so. I think Canada will become second after the US. We already noticed since the beginning of the year, let's say, an increase in inquiries for Canada. And of course, this news comes at a perfect moment when many students are still undecided and have not yet committed for the September intake. So I'm quite optimistic, especially while Australia and New Zealand borders are still closed. Canada will reap, the fruits of excellent measures and a good management of the COVID so far.
Okay, and David, if you could change one rule for incoming student recruitment for Ireland tomorrow, what would it be?
Well, if it's within the pandemic context, then I would change the rule that we could teach face-to-face EU arrivals and EU students in our schools. And then on a broader context, I would like that we would transfer a very good scheme we had for visa students from Turkey to another country, for example, where it was very successful, to another country like Colombia, and work with the Irish embassy on the ground in Bogota to, deliver easy and quick visas for study purposes for English language for Ireland.
Okay, let's quickly run through a few more headlines from the last few days before we take some questions from the audience.
ILSC Education Group has announced an annual Daniel Lefort Memorial Scholarship in honour of ILSC and College Greystone Montreal's late director, as well as a new digital marketing programme at Greystone College Montreal, and expanded its course portfolio in Toronto and Vancouver with new work co-op options.
The UK's Boarding Schools Association has received confirmation that young learners will be able to study up to 6 months at independent schools on a visitor visa, clarifying recent conflicting advice from government departments.
UK ELT provider, the Liverpool School of English, has ceased trading and has entered voluntary liquidation, with the pressures of ongoing travel restrictions and lack of business insurance payouts cited as reasons.
Unisest, a pre-arrival e-current account for international students and workers coming to the UK, has officially launched with support from MasterCard and Railsbank.
And a newly formed Association of Japanese Language Schools, Inbound Agencies and other international education organisations has called on the Japanese government to open the border for students for the October term in a special online event which was attended by hundreds of students. Okay, well, David and Pascal, is there any other comments you'd like to make or anything you'd like to add?
Well, I would like to just say that, all of us in this sector, agents, teachers, schools, students, the whole sort of panoply in the industry have been through a really difficult, traumatic time. And I think, these times test us. So I feel that awful as it has been and is, I think we'll come out stronger and better at the end and more unified. I think things will look different when we are next year. They look different, and different might be better. Let's hope it is. But I think we'll have to sort of, embrace that and move on.
Quite an optimistic view, David. Thank you. Any possible date? Maybe you are in the government corridors sometime, and have you got any idea of a possible date? Do you think September might be, a possible opening?
Yes, I think.
For schools?
In terms of government, we're aligned with the Ministry of Further and Higher Education, and for them, the higher education, etc., all will resume face-to-face classes, all going well in terms in the meantime, in September. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to be in the same position. Obviously, from September, numbers will probably remain very modest in terms of new registrations and new students. But more importantly, we're very keen to have a date whereby we can start to recruit, because as you know from recruiting, there's a 4-month, 6-month, 8-month time lag between going into markets and then students turning up in schools. So that's what we most need. But we would hope that all going well by September, mid-September, there would be capacity in our schools for students who wish to come to do so.
Okay, definitely, David, you can tell us, your members that I've got students, I would say, ready with their suitcases in front of the front door, ready to leave. And I'm honest about that. And that there are, some are just waiting for a mail from us to say, schools reopen. And as you know, it's not difficult to buy a flight, from Brussels to Dublin. That's easy and cheap. And really, some young people are really ready and keen, traveling to Ireland as soon as possible.
Well, Pascal, I think as we speak, some of our schools are racing to the airport to meet those students.
That's also a good news.
So, Pascal, are there any countries that your students are going to at the moment? Where are people able to travel from Belgium?
There are not many countries on our shelves at the moment, unfortunately.
No.
I keep on taking countries off my shelves still at the moment. At the moment, I can send students to Spain, but I'm just, frankly fearing that Spain would take the same measure as the Maltese government. Hopefully not. When you see that most of the country is now in red, I'm just fearing that, or that let's say Spain might request from students to be fully vaccinated, and that could be also a problem. I've got, where I've got the most of my bookings so far for September, it's actually to Spain.
Okay.
So Malta would be a second, and if Ireland can open, I'm sure Malta can catch up very quickly. Of course, we also have, longer term, enrollments for the UK, for Canada as well, obviously, which will increase, and for the US as well. But it's, still, small, or I would say 20% of the, compared to 2019.
Okay.
I know that one of you said that what are communication channels like between yourselves and airline carriers? I was talking to representatives from Languages Canada, and they have open communication with their national carrier, so Air Canada. Do you have something similar in place so that you're getting up-to-date information about what travel would be available for students?
I would say the Belgian professional travel agencies associations are in regular contact with our national, let's say, airlines. I would say we are too small to actually, be weighing sufficiently, let's say, for airlines. So most of the time, it's a contact between the travel agency, professional agencies, and those airlines. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And David, is that the same with you? What sort of communication do the schools have with airlines?
Well, I mean, we're at the sort of receiving end,
Yeah.
We don't have tremendous, day-to-day or even regular contact with airlines in terms of incoming. I mean, in terms of ourselves and schools in the days when we used to travel, traveling for marketing events, we would be more sort of in contact with airlines, but not for incoming. We're at the sort of receiving end, really.
Okay. And what are vaccination rates like in Ireland and Belgium?
Well, in Ireland, the fully vaccinated population is 64% of the population, and I think it's about sort of 78% have had one jab. 64% are fully vaccinated.
Okay. And what about in Belgium, Pascal?
A bit less, I would say near 80%, let's say, with one dose, and then fully vaccinated around 50%. Yeah, so mainly the young people are now starting to be vaccinated, and of course that's this is the population we are most keen in seeing, being vaccinated, of course. So that's hopefully there will be more and more young people being vaccinated during the summer. Yeah, so
okay.
A couple of countries are offering vaccination upon arrival to international students. Canada's one of them. What about in Ireland, David? Is there any sort of scope for that for students that might not have been vaccinated that could come to Ireland and get it there?
Well, it hasn't been mooted yet anyway. I mean, at the moment, next Monday starts the opening of hospitality in Ireland. So, well, indoor hospitality in terms of restaurants and everything. And the government is introducing there a sort of a passport scheme for people who have been you must be doubly vaccinated before you can go and dine indoors. But that's about the only development that's happened so far in terms of vaccination or technology towards vaccination in Ireland.
Okay, right. We've got a comment on our message board from Sylvia Lopez. She says that Iberia Express, Spanish national airline, won't resume activity to Cork Airport until next summer. So that will be good since our students now have to fly to Dublin Airport and it makes it more complicated. So David, I mean, what's your reaction? Obviously, if there's no flights, people can't go anywhere. So sort of how is this something that you work on as in the association in MEI?
Well, I mean, we do. Well, I mean, obviously, where you have airports closed for business reasons, it's up to us to try and provide more volume of business into the airports. I mean, in that sense, that's the only way we can ensure that they stay open. But it's always a problem with with regional or second cities that if they don't have the connectivity, that's the problem. I mean, they can fly to Dublin, and there is in Ireland, in terms of trains and buses, there is a good connectivity between Dublin and Cork, which is about 2.5, maximum 3 hours by road or by rail. But it's an ongoing problem, and especially from markets where there are only flights to Dublin, like from Turkey, for example. That has been an ongoing issue with non-Dublin or outside Dublin schools in terms of trying to access certain markets. We work on that all the time, but it's sort of a mixed bag. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not.
Okay, another question here from David Giacourt from VGC International. Canada does not recognise the Russian vaccine Sputnik for international students inbound to Canada. What about Belgium and Ireland? So Pascal, does Belgium recognise the Sputnik vaccine?
To my knowledge, no. I think we only recognise so far the 4 usual vaccines. So I don't think Sputnik is recognised. I know that in Europe there was talk at some point. Germany wanted to recognise the Sputnik vaccine, but I don't know more about it.
No, in Ireland we only recognise the vaccines that have been authenticated by the European Medical Union. So Sputnik isn't one of those yet anyway. So it's just the more mainstream ones that we're working with.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that's all our questions from the audience. So that brings us to the end of this week's StudyTravel TV Live. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to come along to the next one, visit the StudyTravel TV Live page on ST Network, which you can find under the ST Magazine section in the menu. We'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast on this page, and you can also find the recording of this episode and past episodes in the listing at the bottom.
Finally, we'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests, Pascal and David, and thank you again to our sponsor, Londonist. We'll be hosting these broadcasts every fortnight on a Friday, so the next one will be held on the 6th of August at the same time, which is 4 p.m. British Summer Time. We hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.